The entire story has concluded. Heaven may not have created me, Liu Ryan, but treacherous paths stretch through eternity under the night's embrace. Liu Ryan reminds you to connect to Wi-Fi, prepare your chips, and throw in some free little flowers. The story begins now. On a cruise ship, I proposed to my girlfriend of 6 years. She, however, rejected me without hesitation. "I'm a firm believer in never marrying," she said. "Besides, you're just an unemployed loser. With what are you planning to get married?" This led to a massive argument aboard the ship. In the midst of our quarrel, a tsunami struck unexpectedly. The two of us perished together at sea. Opening my eyes again, we both returned to life 8 years earlier. This time, she decisively proposed a breakup, not wanting to repeat history. I chose to set her free. 8 years later, she clung to her white knight and looked down at me from above. "Unbelievable," she sneered. "You're still a worthless piece of trash. Good thing I left you early." I couldn't be bothered to respond to her gloating face. That is, until my pregnant girlfriend leaned affectionately against me. Suddenly, she grabbed my wrist tightly. With gritted teeth, she glared at me. "Who gave you permission to have a child with another woman?" As I tried to hold onto my girlfriend Liu Ryan, she violently flung my hand away. "Gee, Boda, don't touch me. I'm officially breaking up with you right now." I was stunned, but as I caught the joy brimming in her eyes, I understood everything. It turned out she too had been reborn on this very day, the day of our university classmates gathering. In our previous life, I was a freelance investor. Liu Ryan was a pianist. Her hands were incredibly precious, so I took care of all the housework. She had high standards for quality of life, so I constantly came up with surprises to delight her. Back then, my world revolved entirely around her. Even the moon in the sky, I would have found a way to bring it down for her. The turning point in our relationship came when I proposed. I meticulously prepared a romantic evening with flowers, but Liu Ryan in front of her friends unhesitatingly rejected me. "Gee, Boda," she said, "I'm a firm believer in never marrying. I will never marry you." Later, I accidentally overheard from her best friend that Liu Ryan, being stunningly beautiful, was always surrounded by admirers. How could she possibly want to marry someone like me? A man who idled around at home doing nothing? Only someone like Zijichuan, a top-tier pianist, could match her. When Liu Ryan returned, she lashed out at me. She told me never to do something as childish as proposing again. She insisted she was firmly against marriage. Moreover, her white moonlight had already started a global tour. And then there was me, just a useless man, doing nothing of significance. Later, she tried to push me into joining a piano troupe, hoping I'd learn some of her white moonlight's ambition. I resolutely refused. From then on, she began mocking me with sarcasm, using my unemployment as a reason to belittle me, and even threatening to break up with me as leverage. But I never told her. I wasn't just an ordinary stay-at-home husband. On the contrary, I had my own career. I was one of the most outstanding investors in the country. I worked from home and earned more than most people could in a lifetime. She never noticed that every gift I gave her was a top-tier luxury item. She didn't realize that the villa we lived in was fully paid for by me. Nor did she know about the extensive cash flow I managed, moving through countless accounts. So I didn't understand why I had to strive to improve myself, like her so-called white moonlight. Eventually, I lost my patience and had a huge argument with her, which left me physically and emotionally drained, so I broke up with her. Before our breakup became official, Liu Ryan expressed a desire to visit Serbia once more. I agreed. But unexpectedly, we encountered a maritime disaster. If life gave us a second chance, then this time, we must avoid making the same mistakes. Before long, I heard news that Liu Ryan and her white moonlight were together. As for me, my life continued as usual. I kept working as a freelance investor. 8 years later, I had just bet my entire portfolio on a single stock. When I got a call from a friend, he invited me to a concert. I intended to refuse, but I couldn't withstand his persistent coaxing. So casually slipping on a pair of flip-flops, I went. As soon as I arrived at the gate, I heard a serene and ethereal melody. A soft female voice called out, "G Boater." I turned and saw Liu Ryan, whom I hadn't seen in years. She was dressed in a beautiful little dress, her eyes scanning me up and down. With a disdainful tone, she said, "It's been so long, and you're still as shabby as ever." I was about to greet her politely when a mocking voice interrupted me. "Ryan, is this your good-for-nothing ex-boyfriend? Should I help him find a job? The piano troupe is still hiring janitors for the restrooms. I think he'd be a great fit." As the words hung in the air, a young man wrapped his arm around Liu Ryan's shoulder. Judging by their closeness, I immediately guessed that this was Liu Ryan's white moonlight, Zi Jichuan, the man she had been willing to deceive me for in her previous life, just to marry him. I pretended not to notice the sarcasm in Zi Jichuan's words, and replied calmly, "No need." There were a few mutual friends with them. One of them patted me on the shoulder. "Ji Boda." Jichuan's offer was well-intentioned. Don't let the Job's dirty or smelly nature make you feel inferior. His work, there's no shame in it. It's better than staying home doing nothing. As soon as he finished speaking, the others burst into laughter. Exactly. Even if your family is wealthy, one day you'll burn through all that money. You should hurry up and find a job. Listening to their mockery, I felt no emotion. After all, I wasn't close to any of them. We were merely acquaintances. I didn't see the need to argue with them. People are always like this. When they see someone living worse than them, they instinctively want to kick them when they're down, but they never consider that perhaps others just don't feel the need to share their lives with them. Seeing me remain silent, a friend who had always held a grudge against me spoke discontentedly. "Ji Boda, this is a rare opportunity born out of generosity. Jichuan is willing to help you out of friendship. Don't be so ungrateful." I was speechless. With a helpless sigh, I replied, "I've already said, I don't need his help." Liu Ryan frowned in displeasure. "Ji Boda, I've told you before. Stop aiming so high. You're a university graduate. Even if you're a university graduate without any work experience, no high-paying job would want you." Zi Jichuan affectionately patted Liu Ryan's head. "Ji Boder, are you rejecting my goodwill because you're jealous that I'm with Ryan? Neither of us mind. So if you do, aren't you being a bit too petty?" Ryan was right. You're so stubborn, completely clueless about how the world works. Why no need to be like this? I didn't know how to respond. Why do these people enjoy creating drama so much? Yes, I didn't have a job, but does that necessarily mean I'm living off my parents? Fortunately, my friend arrived just in time. Using the excuse that the concert was about to start, he dragged me away directly. Only then did I manage to avoid their continued ridicule. But even after entering the venue, I could still hear their sparse, mocking voices. Why do you think Liu Ryan ever fancied Ji Boda in the first place? Other than having a bit of family money, what else does he have? And he even rejected Zi Jichuan's goodwill. Does he really think he's someone important? Must be trying to save face while pretending to be better off than he is. Definitely just pretending to be rich and capable. Men, right? Their egos are always so strong. These words all reached Zi Jichuan's ears. He smiled faintly, looking down at me with a condescending gaze. He said, "Ji Boda, don't take their words to heart. Back in university, you were way ahead of me academically. But who would have thought you'd end up like this? So you really can't blame them for gossiping about you." Liu Ryan gave me a resentful glance. Useless waste. As the concert progressed, I suddenly realized that tonight's pianist was none other than Zi Jichuan, dressed in a custom-made black suit. With his impeccable aura, he drew shrieks from the women in the audience. Even friends nearby couldn't hold back their admiration. Look at Jichuan's artistic demeanor. No wonder so many women chase after him. Back in university, Jichuan was already the campus heartthrob. Now, with his overseas credentials, his worth has skyrocketed. I even heard that a renowned domestic master is planning to take him as a disciple. His future is limitless. Perhaps feeling the audience's gaze. During the intermission, Jichuan suddenly stood up from the stage. In less than a second, the lights in the venue dimmed completely, leaving a single spotlight shining on him. Holding a ring, he knelt on one knee, facing Liu Ryan's direction. At this grand concert, I want to thank one person. That person is my fiancé, Liu Ryan. Thank you for supporting my musical career and taking care of my life, allowing me to reach the heights I stand at today. Ryan, will you marry me? Liu Ryan stood up excitedly from her seat in the audience. Someone handed her a microphone. Jichuan, I will. I also want to thank you. If not for your guidance on my piano skills, I might still be stuck where I was before. Being able to marry you is the greatest fortune of my life. The audience erupted into applause and cheers. At that moment, I finally understood. Liu Ryan's so-called no marriage policy was directed at me alone. Because I wasn't Jichuan, she didn't want to marry me. I let out a breath of relief. Thank goodness I had let go of her. Even my friends couldn't help but sigh. I used to think you two would get married, but your girlfriend now is really nice too. Thinking of my girlfriend's pure and sweet face, I quietly curved my lips into a smile. I casually greeted my friends before heading to the restroom. Unexpectedly, I ran into Liu Ryan on my way out. I nodded at her in acknowledgement and was about to leave, but she called out to stop me. Boda, look at yourself, you lost me. And now you're worse off than a beggar. How did you end up like this? Back then, I advised you to join the piano ensemble, to study diligently under Jichuan. With his guidance, even if you didn't become famous overnight, you'd at least be doing better than this aimless state you're in now. Look at the classmates who came today. Who among them isn't doing better than you? I glanced down at my modest outfit and responded helplessly. What's wrong with the way I dress? Liu Ryan impatiently shouted at me. It's been more than a decade. How can you still be like this? Is it so hard to admit you failed in life? I'm just relieved I didn't repeat the misfortune of my past life. I didn't want to argue with Liu Ryan. I turned around, ready to leave, but then I saw Jichuan walking over with an air of superiority. He reached out to block my path. Boda, are you catching up with Ryan? Or lowering yourself to beg her for another chance? We were classmates once, so if you just ask. I'm not such an unreasonable person. If you're jealous that I have Ryan, then I think that's unnecessary. You can't stop her from choosing someone better, can you? Jichuan's repeated provocations made me a little annoyed. Losing patience, I retorted. Just because I'm not wearing designer clothes doesn't mean I'm broke. Alright then, I said. I won't pretend anymore. Even the music group you belong to is under my name. I wonder where you get the audacity to mock me like this. With your attitude today, I could have HR fire you immediately. Hearing my words, Jichuan burst into mocking laughter, as if he had just heard the most absurd joke. Boda, do you have delusions of grandeur? If you were truly the president of Qianshan Music Company, would Ryan have abandoned you to be with me? Even Liu Ryan couldn't hold back her disdainful expression. A man having confidence is a good thing, but pretending and bragging? That's just pathetic. To think I once considered you a competitor. You've really let me down. You're not even qualified to carry my shoes. As he spoke, Jichuan provocatively patted my shoulder. Beside him, Liu Ryan playfully threw herself into his arms. Jichuan, she cooed. Don't joke around. How could Boda ever compare to you? Jichuan clearly enjoyed Liu Ryan's flattery, and with his arm around her, he walked off, laughing. In my past life, after Liu Ryan agreed to be with me, Zijichuan, who was abroad at the time, called me. Boda, he had said, one day I'll stomp you into the ground. Don't get too full of yourself too soon. Looking at them now, it's clear that he and Liu Ryan are a perfect match. They both thrive on constant comparison with others, but I don't. And that's why I've chosen to keep my distance from them. When I returned to the concert hall, most of the audience had already left. I greeted my friends briefly and was about to leave when Zijichuan stopped me with a stern expression. Why? I asked, annoyed. I've lost the diamond ring I bought for Ryan, he said. No one who has been in contact with Ryan can leave. Liu Ryan's face was full of anxiety. That ring is worth several million. She suddenly seemed to think of something and turned to me with a suspicious look. Boda, did you steal my diamond ring? As soon as she said this, the others also turned their skeptical gazes toward me. Surely not, right? Boda wouldn't do such a thing, would he? Why not? Desperate dogs will jump over walls. Didn't you see how restless he looked? Hearing Liu Ryan's accusation, I frowned in frustration. You're accusing me of theft. Do you have any evidence? If it's such an expensive item, why don't you call the police? That would save you from falsely accusing me here. I glanced at the time. It was already close to 11. At this hour, my girlfriend would usually be pestering me to tell her a bedtime story. I just wanted to resolve this quickly and go home to rest. But of course, Zijichuan rejected my suggestion. No, he said. If it really was an old classmate who took it, this would be hard to resolve. Let me search you instead. If I don't find anything, I'll let you leave. I hadn't stolen their ring to begin with, so I didn't flinch. Fine, I said, resigned, do as you please. I calmly allowed Zijichuan to search me. He pulled a sparkling diamond ring from the pocket of my plain white t-shirt. Engraved on it were the letters LRY. I recognized it as the engagement ring Zijichuan had used to propose. Remaining composed, I explained. I didn't steal your ring. Liu Ryan stepped forward, attempting to slap me. Would a thief ever admit to being a thief? She snapped. Boda, I can't believe you turned out to be this kind of person. You're willing to steal and rob for money now, but you wouldn't accept the opportunities I gave you. I must have been blind to ever be with you. Her hand was just a centimeter away from my face when I caught it. Losing patience, I shook her off. I already told you it wasn't me. How can you accuse someone based solely on words? If you're so certain it was me, then call the police. Let them determine the truth. The commotion in the hall finally drew the attention of the concert management staff. At that moment, someone walked over. I looked up to see my petite girlfriend, Shen Qianshan. Noticing her heavily pregnant belly, I hurried forward to support her. Qianshan, why are you here? Shen Qianshan pouted unhappily. I waited so long for you at home, but you didn't come back, so I came to find you. This little troublemaker always needed company at night. I signaled to a nearby management staff member. Go! Pull up the surveillance footage and check it. Seeing me use a commanding tone with the concert staff, both Zijichuan and Liu Ryan looked startled. Zijichuan scoffed dismissively. Boda, do you think this concert hall belongs to your family? You demand someone to check the surveillance, and they'll just do it for you? Shen Qianshan was about to speak, but I stopped her. Now I see clearly. To deal with someone as stubborn as Zijichuan, the only way is to throw the evidence right in his face to make him comply. But I didn't expect the management staff to recognize me. All right. Mr. G, please wait a moment. I'll get the surveillance footage for you right away. Hearing the respectful tone of the management staff toward me, the others began to sense that something was off. Mr. G, did I mishear? If I remember correctly, isn't the president of Qianshan Music Company surname G? Could it really be Boda? Impossible. If he really is, why would he dress so plainly? I didn't bother to explain their doubts. I simply instructed the management staff firmly, make sure to retrieve tonight's surveillance footage. But Djibouti immediately interrupted loudly. That won't be necessary. Since we found what we need, there's no need to trouble the police. We're all classmates here. I never intended to blow this out of proportion. Hearing this, Shen Qianshan smirked sarcastically. How can we just let it go? When you were slandering him just now, you weren't showing this kind of attitude. Why the sudden fear after finding out he's the president of Qianshan Music Company? Don't back down now. If you dare to falsely accuse him, then you should be ready to face the consequences of being proven wrong. Shen Qianshan's words erupted like a bolt of thunder, making everyone's faces turn pale. How could it be possible? Djibouti is really the president of Qianshan Music Company? I've heard about this guy before. They say he's the most brilliant investor in the country. Every company he invests in makes a profit, never a loss. If that's really the case, why would Ryan ever break up with Djibouti? Even my best friend was shocked, pounding my chest in disbelief. You sneaky guy! You even kept this from me? My own brother turns out to be a hidden president? I cleared my throat lightly. You never asked. It's not like I go around announcing it to everyone. These words were an indirect admission of my identity, not only making Zijichuan's face even more sour, but also turning Liu Ryan's expression as dark as coal. She hadn't expected that I wasn't as useless as I seemed. Liu Ryan, visibly uneasy, nervously twisted her fingers and repeatedly sought confirmation from me. Djibouti, are you really the president of Qianshan Music Company? Hearing my casual affirmation, Liu Ryan's face instantly turned ghostly pale. When your status becomes prestigious, those who once belittled you suddenly change their tune. Even acquaintances you've only met once start smiling and trying to cozy up to you. Someone asked, "Hey, is this your girlfriend or your wife?" Holding Shen Qianshan's hand, I officially announced to everyone, "This is my girlfriend, Shen Qianshan. When she has our child, I'll invite everyone to our wedding and treat you to the banquet." Shen Qianshan, her face flushed with shyness, buried herself in my embrace, playfully hitting my chest. "When the time comes, flowers and a ring. Don't you dare leave anything out. Otherwise, I won't marry you." Alright. I coaxed her patiently. Seeing this scene, Liu Ryan's heart filled with discomfort. But I didn't notice. I casually humored the flattering friends around me. Before long, the police arrived. The surveillance footage was retrieved, and within just an hour, my innocence was proven. It turned out that outside the restroom, when Zijichuan patted my shoulder, he had secretly slipped the diamond ring into my pocket. For deliberately framing someone, Zijichuan was taken away by the police for investigation. Before being taken away, he clutched my hand, pleading, "Djibouti, I didn't mean to frame you. I was just jealous of you. Please, could you tell the police to let it go? We're classmates after all. Can you bear to see me detained?" I looked down and saw Zijichuan gazing at me with hopeful eyes. Under his pleading gaze, I responded coldly, "I refuse. Adults must take responsibility for their actions." Then Zijichuan, unwilling to accept his fate, was taken away. Just as I stepped out of the concert hall, Liu Ryan rushed out anxiously and stopped me. "Djibouti." I knew Liu Ryan had many things to say to me. I gestured for Shen Qianshan to wait in the car. Liu Ryan's gaze at me was filled with complexity and regret. "Why did you never tell me about any of this? I had no idea your status was so prominent. Did you ever truly love me?" The hand holding the cigarette at my lips paused for a moment, and I looked up at the slightly disheveled Liu Ryan before me. My parents were killed in a fight over the family inheritance, so I learned from a young age to hide my brilliance. Not even Liu Ryan. Did I ever tell her? I had thought about telling her, though. In a past life, if she had accepted my proposal, I would have told her everything and even transferred all my companies to her name. But she refused. Later, I happened to open Liu Ryan's phone notes by chance, and what I saw in there revealed everything. Her writings detailed every little thing about Zijichuan, every word drenched in her regret. It was regret over not marrying Zijichuan. Her so-called no-marriage policy was just an excuse she used to reject me. In that moment, I began to deeply question whether pursuing Liu Ryan was ever the right choice. But now I no longer wonder, because I have Shen Qianqian. I shook my head coldly. I used to love you, but not anymore. As you can see, Qianqian is already carrying my child. I didn't know why Liu Ryan said those words. 8 years had passed, we were no longer the same people. Pursuing the past had become utterly meaningless. Now I only want to take responsibility for my Qianqian. Her father and I are business partners. We met at a dinner gathering one evening. Her father brought her along. She admired my decisive and efficient nature, as well as my exceptional academic abilities. At the same time, her innocence, romantic spirit, and simplicity captivated me. Naturally, we ended up together. I had already proposed. But Shen Qianqian unexpectedly became pregnant. She insisted on waiting until after giving birth to get married. She said, "Right now, I'm chubby and won't look good in a wedding dress." So I went along with her wishes. Hearing my response, Liu Ryan's face instantly twisted. She looked as though she was in deep pain. But then, as I thought about it, I couldn't help but laugh. In our previous life, she despised me so much. How could she possibly be sad now? Just a couple of days later, I received a call from the police. They asked if I wanted to press charges against Zijichuan. My response was to insist on handling it through official channels. During this time, his parents approached me multiple times, offering money for an out-of-court settlement. I turned them all down. I don't lack money these days. But what I didn't expect was that Zijichuan had been reported for falsifying his way into a study abroad opportunity by taking someone else's spot. The victim posted the incident online. Back in school, he was considered a prominent figure. Soon after graduation, he joined the nation's top music ensemble. But now, this scandal had surfaced, revealing how he took someone else's spot for studying abroad. Originally, the victim could have used this opportunity to gild their own career and prospects. But because of this, they lost their chance to shine. The flowers and applause that rightfully belonged to the victim were forcibly taken by Zijichuan. The victim lost their chance to join the premier music ensemble, and now can only work as a teacher at a modest piano school. Hearing this news, I was furious. I urged the police to thoroughly investigate all his crimes. Studying music is incredibly costly. Some families invest their entire resources to support their child's music education, hoping for them to achieve great things. Acts that shatter such hopes are utterly abhorrent. But I never expected this matter to implicate Liu Ryan. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. Liu Ryan's tearful voice came through the receiver. "G. Boater, what do I do? The police just called and asked me to come to the station. I'm so scared. They mentioned something about Zijichuan taking bribes from a colleague. Now it's being officially investigated. You don't think it'll implicate me, do you?" I frowned slightly, calmly reassuring her. "Go to the police station and give your statement first. Let's see how things unfold." The next day, Liu Ryan knocked on my door. When I opened it and saw her, I suggested we go to a cafe downstairs. As soon as we sat down, Liu Ryan burst into tears. "G. Boda, what should I do? Please help me, won't you?" It turned out the police had contacted her because the diamond ring that Zijichuan gave her was purchased with bribery money. Now she's required to return the ring. But unexpectedly, that very afternoon, Liu Ryan received a call from the bank. It turned out that Zijichuan had not only taken bribes, but had also taken out a 20 million loan in Liu Ryan's name. Over all these years, Liu Ryan, following Zijichuan's lead, hadn't worked a single day. She had no means to repay such a staggering loan. So she had no choice but to come to me. I have always had a soft spot for women crying. After offering a few words of comfort to Liu Ryan, I sighed and said, "I'll see if I can think of a way to help." With that, I pushed the coffee on the table toward her. Her palm covered the back of my hand. In a soft tone, she said, "Gee Boda, I knew you'd help me. You still have feelings for me, don't you? I must have been blind to have chosen Zijichuan over you back then. Now I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have abandoned you. If you just say the word now that you'll marry me, I'll marry you right away, okay?" I frowned in exasperation. "Liu Ryan, we've already broken up. I already have someone I care about now. Can you stop saying things that don't matter? I don't love you anymore. Face the reality." Liu Ryan became emotional. "That's impossible. If you didn't love me, how could you take my call? And your attitude toward me, it's no different from the way you treated me in our past life. How can you say you don't love me anymore? Gee Boda, admit it. You still love me," I replied coldly. "I just pity you. If it were another woman, I still wouldn't stand by and do nothing." Liu Ryan, this isn't love. If I've done anything that led to your misunderstanding, I apologize, but please stop indulging in these fantasies. After I finished speaking, I turned around, ready to leave. Behind me, Liu Ryan shouted hysterically, "Do you really think Shen Qianshan, so young, loves a middle-aged, unkempt man like you? You're 8 years older than her. You two will never be happy. I'm the only one who truly suits you." At that moment, I regretted agreeing to meet her. Why hadn't I noticed before that Liu Ryan had such a crazy side to her? She couldn't bear to see anyone happy. People often criticized me for being unkempt. Yes, I don't like wearing big brand logos all over my body. I dress for comfort, not appearances. In my past life, Liu Ryan would often complain about it, saying I dressed worse than a beggar. But what she didn't know was, I owned 5 companies, multiple villas, and luxury cars. A person's identity and status cannot be judged by their clothing. Wouldn't that be incredibly superficial? In my past life, the reason I ended up with Liu Ryan was that I pursued her for 5 years. From high school graduation to college graduation. At the graduation ceremony, she finally agreed to be with me. She said, "I've never had someone pursue me for so long before, and your perseverance moved me." She fell in love with me, and I liked her honesty and sincerity. But I never expected that the qualities we initially admired in each other would one day turn into blades that cut us both. Before long, Liu Ryan began appearing in front of me frequently. One day, she sent me a text message. "If you don't meet me, I'll kill myself in front of your house." Fearing she might actually do something dangerous due to her unstable mental state, I had no choice but to agree to meet her at an amusement park. As soon as she arrived, she grabbed my arm. "Gee Boda, just accept it. You love me. You still care about me, don't you? You're afraid I might really end my life." I was too tired to argue anymore, so the first discreetly called her parents. Seeing me remain silent, Liu Ryan thought she had a chance. She began apologizing desperately. "I'm sorry, Gee Boda. I know you're still angry about me leaving you. I truly know I was wrong. Please forgive me this time, okay? You once said, no matter what I did, you wouldn't be angry with me. Don't you remember?" "That was in the past," I replied. I admitted that I once loved Liu Ryan deeply, so much that I wanted to marry her. But my love for her had been completely worn away by her repeated insults and humiliations. I waited until her parents arrived at the scene before preparing to leave. Her parents stopped me. "Boda, is it really impossible for you to anymore? I remember how much you used to love Ryan. I knew she was ill and emotionally unstable now. But before her mother could finish her sentence, I interrupted her. Auntie, my girlfriend is due to have our baby next month. After her confinement period, we're getting married. If you don't mind, you're welcome to join us for the wedding banquet. Her parents fell silent immediately. I left them with one sentence: spend more time with her. And then I left, facing to elderly people in their 50s. I couldn't bring myself to say anything too harsh. I recommended two of the best psychologists to them and suggested they take Liu Ryan for an evaluation. That was the best I could offer. After returning home, I grew worried that Liu Ryan might show up again. So I discussed moving to our villa in the countryside with Shen Qianchen. After hearing my suggestion, she snuggled into my arms and sweetly said, "Are you worried Liu Ryan might harm our baby?" Yes, my right eyelid kept twitching. I had a bad feeling something was going to happen, but I couldn't risk Shen Qianchen's life. Without hesitation, she agreed. As long as I wasn't on a business trip, I stayed home with Shen Qianchen. But on the third day after I left for a trip, Liu Ryan came knocking at the door. Before leaving, I had specifically warned Shen Qianchen, if a stranger comes to the door, don't open it. But Shen Qianchen, craving a snack, ordered delivery that day. Thinking it was the delivery driver ringing the doorbell, she opened the door. Who would have thought that the moment Liu Ryan saw Shen Qianchen, she harbored a deep hatred and resentment? She attacked her with a fruit knife. I only found out about this when Shen Qianchen, crying, called me on the phone. My heart leapt into my throat. I abandoned a multi-million-dollar contract on the spot, rushing to drive home. The entire way, I couldn't bring myself to ease off the accelerator. Repeated speed warnings blared from the navigation system, but I ignored them all. In just 4 hours, I made it back home. The scene that greeted me was a floor covered in blood. My heart sank in despair. Later, I learned from the neighborhood security guard that Shen Qianchen had been rushed to the hospital in time. I didn't stop for a second and drove straight to the emergency room. Outside, I saw her parents standing there, their faces full of worrying. "I'm sorry, Uncle and Auntie," I said. "It's my fault for not protecting Qianchen." I was consumed with guilt, wishing that knife had stabbed into me instead. When the security guard told me that Shen Qianchen was covered in blood, I wanted nothing more than to kill Liu Ryan. My poor girl was so afraid of pain. How could she bear something like this? But Qianchen's parents didn't blame me. Their understanding only deepened my guilt. Perhaps it was because of the good deeds I'd done in my life that things didn't take a turn for the worst. 2 hours later, the doctor came out of the emergency room. He removed his mask and said, "Congratulations to the family. The patient and the baby are safe." Hearing that Shen Qianchen was fine, tears instantly streamed down my face. When I saw the nurses wheeling out Shen Qianchen and our baby, I didn't even have time to wipe my tears before following them to the ward. The doctor said the knife had stabbed into Shen Qianchen's abdomen, missing the baby by just 1 centimeter. It was a stroke of misfortune, but also a miracle. Shen Qianchen slept for an entire day and night before waking up. I stayed by her bedside the whole time. When she woke up, she held my hand and began crying. "Honey, is the baby gone? I'm sorry. I failed to protect our child." This silly girl, her first thought upon waking was to blame herself. How could I not love her even more? I quickly brought the baby over for her to see, tears of joy streaming down my face as I said, "No! Our daughter is perfectly fine. Qianchen, you're an amazing mother." After coaxing Shen Qianchen back to sleep, I made a trip to the police station. Liu Ryan thought I had come to see her. Excitedly, she showed me a piece of paper filled with notes, detailed records of my likes and preferences. "Gee, Boder, you came to bail me out, didn't you? See, men are so contradictory. You act cold, but deep down you care. Look, I've written down all your likes and habits. You always said I never paid enough attention to you. Now, I've decided to memorize them all." She beamed like a child, but I was beyond caring. I grabbed her hair and slapped her across the face. Liu Ryan. I never hit women, but you're an exception. Before the police could enter the interrogation room, I gave her 2 more slaps. I poured all my anger and resentment into those slaps. Liu Ryan's cheeks swelled up like a pig's head. Crying and clutching her face, she demanded to know why I had hit her. I was so furious my entire body trembled. Liu Ryan, do you have any idea that Qianshan and our baby almost died because of you? How can your heart be so cruel? It was me who left you. What does she have to do with it? Did you think that if she died, I would come back to you? Did you think you were the only one who was reborn? Let me tell you, I was reborn too. The moment those words left my mouth, Liu Ryan's eyes widened in disbelief. She knew. If I had also been reborn, given how she treated me in our past life, there was no way I would ever choose to be with her again. If you had accepted my proposal back then, I would have transferred all my companies to your name. You would have been the enviable Mrs. G, but you destroyed it all with your own hands. Unwillingness flared up in Liu Ryan's eyes. She grabbed my hand in desperation. Impossible. How could you possibly be reborn? I'm supposed to be the only one reborn. Ji Boda. You obviously love me. How could your feelings change so quickly? It must be because of that B*TCH Shen Qianshan, isn't it? If she dies, you'll definitely come back to me. I shook my head in disappointment. Even now, you still refuse to see the truth. Did she really think that memorizing my preferences would make me fall in love with her again? Late affection is cheaper than grass. When she humiliated me like I wasn't even human, when she insulted me, saying I wasn't even as good as a dog, that's when I stopped loving her. Liu Ryan, the thing I regret most in this life is ever loving you. Those words seemed to pierce her deeply, and she screamed, lunging toward me. Unfortunately for both of us, the police who rushed and pinned us down firmly, seeing the unwillingness and rage in her eyes. A hint of satisfaction flickered through mine. She would never find peace in this life. Because I had struck her. I was detained for 5 days. As for Liu Ryan, though she was guilty of intentional harm, her diagnosis of mental illness spared her from sentencing. Instead, she was permanently committed to a psychiatric hospital. I made a point to speak with the nurses assigned to her care, asking them to take good care of her. I wanted her to live in discomfort, never to have a moment of ease. Daily slaps, insufficient food, and shabby clothing became her norm. Not long after, Liu Ryan couldn't take it anymore and jumped to her death. When I learned of her fate, I felt no joy from revenge. Instead, I found myself sighing. Who would have thought that things between Liu Ryan and me would end like this? But my new life was about to begin. 3 days later, Shen Qianshan would walk down the aisle in a beautiful wedding dress to marry me. On that day, I would become the happiest groom and father